Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to our special Chocolatey product live stream for July 2024. Back in March, Stevie and Josh looked at how to create Chocolatey packages, but once you have that created, how do you keep it up to date automatically? Today, we've got Josh back to show us exactly how we can do that. Speaking of Josh, let's get him to introduce himself. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, James. I'm a senior infrastructure operations engineer here at Chocolatey. Looking forward to revisiting this package.
Fantastic. My name is actually James Ruskin, and I am also a senior solutions engineer here at Chocolatey Software. As a quick reminder, just as kind of housekeeping, we do run 2 live streams every month on the first and third Thursday. This live stream is the tick of it, where we spotlight Chocolatey products, recent releases, upcoming releases, and other important stuff. And our other live stream on the third Thursday is called Unpacking Software, which includes news, mild chat, light banter between Scotsmen, and opinions on the world of software and software management. You can watch us live, of course, or catch up later with the podcast for that one. And details will be in the description below. You can also be notified of all of our Chocolatey content and stuff that we talk about by joining our chat on Discord, subscribing to us here on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other places. I'm sure I'm forgetting one there, sorry. Twitch, there we go. And chatting to us on many of our other community platforms, such as Facebook, Blue Sky, and others. They're all on chocolatey.org and probably also in the description below. So let's get on over to the content. How do we keep our packages updated? So Josh, over to you.
Sure. So the first thing I want to do is sort of revisit what a package is and quickly recap what we did on the last coding live stream. So if I bring my screen up, this is the elk-native package, which was the output of the last stream that I did with, as James mentioned there, Stevie back in, I believe it was March. And the end result is effectively the contents of this package is a new spec file and a script that tells with instructions on how to install the software that is the elk-native Mastodon client. And of course, an important concept when you're dealing with a package manager is that a package manager manages packages, not software, but a package quite often itself contains software or installs software. So they aren't necessarily the same thing, a package and software.
Yeah, that's something we always emphasize.
Yes. So yes, this is the end result of that. The only thing that's changed now is I've taken that output from the last stream, and it's now in a GitHub repository where I keep the Chocolatey packages that I maintain for the community repository. So I've cloned that down locally, and now now that we've got that package, we want to keep it up to date. As new releases of the software come out, we don't want to be manually checking to see, hey, has the software been updated? Oh, yes, it has. Now I need to go back and edit this new spec file, edit the installation script, repackage it, and push the update back up to the community repository. So that's where the concept of automatic packaging comes in. And at a very high level, the components that what you need in order to be able to automatically package your software is some way of first knowing that the software has been updated, and then 2, updating the contents of that package. So a very common tool for carrying out that task is a module called now called chocolatey-au. and this is a PowerShell module that has been forked from the original creator that's archived it. They did a fantastic job of building this tool and providing it to the community, and now the chocolatey community itself has picked up maintaining it from here.
Yeah.
So we're going to be using this tool. Our usage of it today is going to be fairly simple. There is a lot of documentation in the README here for additional things you can do with the module, and also I wanted to point out that there is a big repository if you really want to dive into the weeds, also maintained by the chocolatey community, which is the chocolatey community chocolatey packages repository. And there are a lot of automatic packages under here. And some of the examples in here are quite advanced, and some of them are quite simple. So there's a lot to dig into in here if you're really keen, and if the example today doesn't quite match what you're trying to achieve. But of course, the first thing is we need to install this module if we're going to use it. And I don't think I've already done that on my VM here. So I will, install module. So this is installing the chocolatey-au module off the PowerShell gallery. Very similar to, say, installing a chocolatey package.
Yeah. Down to, in fact, the standard feed type that we're using, or repository type that we're using there.
So we have that. Now, this, I mentioned my repository for where I keep the packages that I maintain. This is it up on GitHub, and we can see the elk-native folder is here, but I have a different subfolder or directory that I keep my automatic packages under. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually move that folder into here, and that's just how I work. Just to keep things organized. So what I'm going to do is simply drag that up into my auto folder and elk-native. So we've already got a new spec file, and in fact, let me open that. It's very bright. And an install file. So when an update occurs for this package specifically, a couple of things need to be updated in both of these files. First, of course, is the version number. This needs to reflect what the version of the updated software is. And also the download URL needs to be updated, and so does the checksum. So the checksum is literally, as we mentioned last time, it's a representation of that file as a string, and there's a cryptographic is probably the correct term to use behind the scenes. Technically, there's a way of hashing that file and getting that number back out. If they don't match, then something's changed and something's wrong.
Yep.
So that's part of course, making sure that nothing's changed upstream that the maintainer of the package isn't aware of.
Yeah. Or, if somebody's gone and changed it from under you, then
yes.
On the way through.
Yes. And of course, so generally speaking, this file won't change unless there's a new version of the package come out, and the link will actually change as well. some software have one download link and they just swap out the download underneath
Yes.
and keep the same link. And I think,
Sometimes the same version, just to be really annoying.
so sometimes you'll find that the checksum doesn't match, and that's because upstream they've changed the file underneath the download link, and that's a rigmarole. But here, luckily, we've got a static download link per what's the word I'm looking for? Per version. That doesn't change on us. And yes, what I'm going to do, just to show the update working when we get to it and what I think of it, I'm going to delete that hash so that we can see that it comes back.
Nice. One of the interesting things I find about chocolatey-au, sorry, I probably should come back to this while you're running it, is that it essentially, it stores the state of the packages in source, which is something that I don't always do myself.
Yes.
And it is very neat to be able to see, oh, hey, actually, here's a diff of what changed in that package between versions. And just be able to see, if you haven't committed that back, this is the stuff that's that has changed in that run.
So what I've done is I've just created a new script in the root of that elk-native packages directory. And this update script is going to be what drives the actual update of this package. So if we open up that, the first thing is I'm going to input that chocolatey-au module. And how AU works, I guess I should probably mention AU being, if I remember correctly, just stands for automatic updater. If I'm remembering that correctly. Oh, yes.
Sorry about that.
Did you catch that, James?
AU just meaning is what I got.
I
think I know. There we go. Perfect. Yep. Yeah, sorry about that.
I was just aware that this whole time we've been calling it chocolatey-au and hadn't actually addressed what AU actually means. Yes.
Yeah.
So first of all, importing that module. Now, how chocolatey-au works is it effectively runs through a set of globally defined functions from this script. And the two that we're going to be using today, and these are the bare minimum that you need, are called, well, I'm going to simplify them. They have AU prefixes on them, but there's get latest, which is where you're actually getting the information about the latest release of the software. And then search replace, which does the actual update of your files that it can't do automatically. So there are some things it does automatically, and we'll cover that when we get there, but there's other things that you need to give it a bit of a helping hand in finding what and where to replace. So first is the get latest, which is, as I said, a function, and it's globally scoped. Get latest. So in here is where we effectively put the logic for where to look for the updates and picking out the specific information we need from that. So for this, we've talked about needing the download URL, the version number, and the release notes. Sorry, I don't think we mentioned the release notes, but we need the release notes.
Certainly something that you can, it's. I don't think it's a requirement per se, but it's definitely something you can do.
So in this case, for this package, I've got a URL in there that points at the version, the release as the release notes. So we grab that basically. So let's get the information, and we'll store it in a variable. Now, we are looking at... Oh, I hadn't actually brought it up. Okay. We are going to be using the GitHub API for this. And hopefully I can type this from native, from memory. Releases latest. I cannot.
1 sec. Well, sorry, I'm sure you've got it somewhere.
Repos. There we go.
That's okay.
So this API is giving machine readable data effectively in the JSON format that we can pull apart and use whatever bits we need from it. Now it is quite heavily rate limited. For my use case, when I'm doing like 5 packages, it doesn't actually matter. But in the community repository, they provide a API key, which allows them to have a bigger rate limit to query more data. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that.
Indeed. And yeah, the other thing, of course, with, even though it's rate limited, it seems like GitHub have been advising against and cracking down on people just scraping the site pages. Yes. And there's a bunch of inherent issues with trying to untangle HTML and stuff along those lines. So it's well worth using the API if you can.
Yes.
Sorry.
What am I looking for? And one thing that because time depending, we'll have a look at this as well, but I also run my updates through GitHub Actions. And as part of that, I need to make sure that I'm using basic parsing, which basically rules out the need for IE or Internet Explorer's bits to be there, which quite often isn't the case when you're using CI/CD tools. So if we go and run that, not that, all of this, we can have a look at the data that's come back now. So we've got all of that data that we saw in the browser there available to us. And so if we work down, the easiest one to get is likely the version number. So we can see the version. Well, generally you're going to see it as the tag name, just depending on how the maintainer tags things. But in this case, it's in the tag. So if we look at tag name, but the actual version number is just that bit.
Sure.
So we need to trim off the start there. And we can do that with a replace. And just replace it with an empty string, and that should give us just the version number. So that is our version number. And we can start saying, okay, this is the data that I want to return. And we'll say version equals that. We also need the URL for the download. And specifically, if I remember correctly, we only have, yes, a 64-bit version. So we'll specifically say URL 64. If we go back to our information from that API, sorry, that's latest release.
I think, yeah, assets.
I think it's assets.
Yeah. Yep, that's the one.
All right. So this is showing us that there's a lot. In fact, there's a lot of assets, right? Because they are, in fact, that one's a better one to look at, the browser download URL. Sorry, chocolatey
There's
logos.
also, I think, name if you just want to, or something along the lines of name.
Actually, yes.
If you just want to filter on the end there.
Name's a good one.
Sorry.
Yes, that's even better. So what we can see there is they support a lot of platforms, and they've of course got zip compressed archives for each of them as well, and signatures for each of them as well. So the one we specifically want is this one here that ends in Windows. We could say just MSI, but at some point in the future they may decide to support ARM architectures as well.
Yep.
So to be quite specific, I'm going to look for the one that ends in underscore Windows, blah 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 blah. So if I copy that and we go back here to assets, and we'll look for sorry, microphone's blocking my keyboard. There we go. What is the one that we just used there? Name ends with cool. So that gives us the one object that's just the just the installer that we're looking for. And then we can shortest way to do it is grab that browser download URL from it. There we go. So that is the download URL that we want for our package.
Perfect.
So we grab that and we come back here and we go, okay, that is the download URL. And then the last one is super easy, hopefully. We've got release notes. And just get everything to line up. There we go. This one, latest release, reactions, no.
I think it's like body or something along those lines.
Oh, actually, no. I'm just wanting...
Or the URL for... Yeah.
There we go. Because what I'm getting here is the link to the release itself. Because what that will have is the release notes for us.
Perfect.
And there's, of course, another view of all the assets that were in there.
Yeah. And it means you don't have to kind of infinitely concatenate old release notes and that sort of thing. If you just have the URL, just done.
So me retyping it. Let's copy that. Okay. So that is, for us, the latest information that we need from this release. Now, what... actually, let me be pedantic about... Okay, I won't be that pedantic.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, that's better. Sorry, that indentation was driving me crazy. Also, I've got tabs instead of spaces. But
earlier you were hitting it once, and it was just I swear it was going wild.
I am used to my editor changing them for me, but I've not using a normal editor today.
Yeah, that's fair.
The output of the get latest module is assigned to a variable within AU called latest. When we actually get to the search and replace, we'll be able to call the properties of that latest variable. What's also going to happen is chocolatey-au is going to download this file and checksum it for us automatically.
Yep.
What you can do, if for whatever reason that doesn't work, is you can do a before update function as well, and you can manually do the checksumming there, or whatever else you need to do before the actual update occurs as well. So you've got the power to do that. We don't have to because it's going to just work for us happily. So we'll go on to doing the next step, which
replacements.
Yes,
sorry,
which I mentioned earlier. If I can spell correctly, AU_ search replace. Now this one, we basically say, here's a file, and these are the changes we need to make within that file.
Is it worth just, sorry, you may have covered this last month, but is it worth just mentioning that both of these functions essentially are literally, you're defining them and they need to essentially be outputting a hash table with certain properties, but not all of them are required. But the basics are, you'll almost certainly always want to have the URL in the previous one, the version, because that's used basically to compare against the current new spec version and to see if an update is required. And then in the search and replace, you've got this hash table that has, as you're about to describe, the paths to files, and then within those, the values for those should be the things you want to replace.
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry.
And these paths are relative to the script file. So the update is just in the root of the module itself, the package directory itself. And I'm looking to update the chocolatey install script, which I'll save myself some typing and copy and paste that name. So I need to go from the current directory into tools and then the chocolatey install. And then inside that, this is another hash table of, as James was saying, a hash table of the replacements that I want to make inside that file. Now, the left-hand side of what we're about to type is telling chocolatey-au what to search for in order to do the replacement. And it is a regex.
Yeah. And, I can't remember exactly which of the technologies is used inside. It's essentially like the two halves of a dash replace value X, comma, value Y. But the one thing to bear in mind is you absolutely cannot do multi-line matching with this. I've been tripped up by that multiple times.
Yes, because effectively what it's doing is, and I'll explain it a bit when we get, well, literally in a couple of seconds, but if I can infer how the internals of it work based on what we're about to type in, it's doing a for each line sort of look through the file, hence not being able to do a multi-line match. So the first thing by convention that I've seen is this, which I believe means do a case-insensitive match. I still tend to match the case anyway, but
it's an interesting one as well, because most PowerShell is inherently case insensitive unless specified otherwise. So it's kind of
and then so that means case insensitive, and then we're actually going to start searching for the string that we want to match against. And the very first thing in here is the caret, which says match the start of the line, effectively. Or strictly speaking, it means match the start of the string. But because it's doing a search line by line, it effectively means match the start of the line. So
just to check, sorry, I can't see any quotes there. Have you got quotes?
Oh, good point.
It's not complaining at you, so I was curious, but sorry about that.
It would start. Well, actually, would it start complaining? It would definitely throw off the highlighting at any rate.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's put the end one on as well, so that highlighting works. So our first one that we're going to be looking for is this $sign URL 64. And then the other ones we will be looking for are checksum and checksum type. These ones have some white space in front of them. This one could have some white space in front of it, though it technically doesn't. Well, sorry, it explicitly doesn't in this case. But to keep things consistent, this /s means look for any white space. Well, look for white space, and we'll put a star there to say there could be none, there could be one, there could be more than one.
Yep.
And then it took me way longer than I would like to admit to actually get to the $sign to match correctly. But what I ended up having to do is escaping it with the slash and then putting it in brackets. Just escaping it didn't work. So that's a little hint. If you need to match the $sign, put a brackets around it. Okay, I don't know why.
Curious as to why that would be. Yeah, that's.
It may be a .NET quirk, but I'm not sure.
I'm gonna have to go check some of my scripts in a bit. It'll be fun.
But then if I URL 64, of course now there is a bunch of white space. I'm not going to count it. An equal sign and some more white space, right? So once again, we go /s, could be some white space. Oh, put that in the wrong place. There's some white space here. Could be any amount of it. Equal sign, more white space, could be any amount of it. And so all of that's in brackets, which for regex is called a capture group. So we can then reference that when we're replacing to say, put this back how it was. Then the bit that we actually want to replace is all of this that's in between the two single quote marks. Yep. So we then do another capture group and go quote anything quote. So effectively we're saying match as long as from this first quote match anything until you see another quote mark. And then we can finally go and actually replace that. So first thing is this $1 is saying put back in anything in this first pair of brackets, which basically means
and
put all of this back in exactly how you found it.
And of course, you're escaping the $sign because otherwise it would use PowerShell variable replacement.
Yes.
And $1 is
$1
group name is useful in regex, but can't be used if you're in double quotes like that, unless you escape it.
And then we want to put back the single quotes, and we're going to replace it with latest dot URL 64. You're about to say something, James?
I was going to go into the latest variable, but I suspect you're about to go into it. So,
yeah. So I mentioned it briefly before, but the output of this get latest is the contents of this hash table that gets returned by the get latest function is assigned to the latest variable, and all the automatic stuff that it does as well. So this latest variable is going to contain the checksum that it does automatically, which happily is what we're going to do next. Not to confuse things, I'll copy and paste that twice. So we are going to do checksum 64. And there's no dollar on the front of it, so we get rid of all of that. Checksum 64 and also checksum type 64. Same deal, get rid of the dollar sign at the front. And coming out of latest, so these are both automatic and they're documented, so that's how I know what they are. Checksum 64 and checksum type 64. Now, if you were the convention in chocolatey is if you had a 32-bit version of these, you would drop the 64 from the end. So if you just had checksum without 64, that's the 32-bit version. In AU, if I'm remembering correctly, you do have to put the 32 there. So you do explicitly have to say, this is the 32-bit version.
Yeah, so they use file name 32, URL 32, checksum type 32, and checksum 32. I see here.
Now, I'll line those up as well because that's how I work. Now, what I don't well, at this point, we can now run the update. What I'm not sure about is if the release notes are going to automatically update, because a lot of the new spec stuff does. But I don't know if that one.
I think that's that checks out, but I rarely.
Yes.
I think
So
I'll be intrigued to find out.
Yes. We did just install the module here, so I will. Yeah, that's fair. I don't have my thing set up properly. I don't have the helpers in my profile on here. So what I'm doing here is I've installed that module above, and just to be sure, I'm refreshing my environment variables to just in case anything needs it.
Of course.
So elk. So at this point we can run the update, and what we'll do is actually no, we're missing one thing, which is now to actually call there it goes, to call the update function from AU. Now what's going to happen, in fact, let's just show it. I'm also used to things automatically saving for me. There we go. If we run the update script, it's going to do a couple of things. First, it's reading the new spec and seeing that the current version's 4.0 and the remote version's 4.0. So there's no need to update at the moment. There's a variable we can set called AU force, which is going to then tell chocolatey-au to ignore the fact that there's not a new version and to just run the update anyway.
Yeah. And that's just, as far as I'm aware, that is literally just comparing the version currently in the new spec. So as we said earlier, it's using the state of the GitHub repository rather than any upstream repository that you might have. And of course, when I say upstream repository, I'm meaning a new spec repository and not a Git repository.
Yes.
It's
an interesting overloaded term.
Of Git latest. Yeah, absolutely.
So what it's saying here is it started it downloaded the file, it started doing the automatic checksum, but then complained that this package doesn't support 32-bit architecture. So what update does by default is it assumes that the package supports 32-bit. So what you can do is tell it, well, actually, I only want you to checksum for 64-bit, which in this case is exactly what we want. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is in that before update function, not only can you do things like manually doing the checksumming, you can use that for embedding the installer in your package as well. So you can get the file to actually embed it in there as well. So that's another use for that. And then you can say, hey, actually don't bother checksumming because we don't need to for an embedded package. In which case you say checksum for none. So now if we run that, I forgot to save. There we go. There we go. So it's downloading the file, or downloaded the file, nice and small. There we go. And what we should see, because we forced it, it's gone and used the date fix notation. So the reason why you might force an update for something when there's not an actual update is, well, potentially because they've gone and changed the installer on you without, so you might need to update the checksum.
Yep.
There might be a bug in the install script that doesn't affect the installer, but does impact the package that you need to fix. So this is a way of you basically append the date to say, this is the version, but I fixed it on this date.
Yeah.
So it's done that automatically for us because we told it to force. And if we look in it now, let's inspect what it did for us. So in the new spec, so no, it didn't update. Well, actually,
that's valid, I think. So
that is still valid. I might just delete that and rerun the update just to double check, because yes, technically it is still that, but it has done the date fix notation up here.
Yep.
Not package tools, and in here we had removed the checksum, so it's added that back in for us. And if we had and if there had been a new download URL, it would have put that in there as well. And actually, if we go and look here, this is where it not only did it package it with that in it, it also updates the file on disk or in the repository. So it says, this is the one where I had removed the checksum. And do I want to reload it? Yes. And there's the checksum. What I do want to do is possibly just do that and see if that comes back to us. Did I save? I did save.
Corey suggests that we could also demonstrate removing the URL, checksum, and checksum type.
Okay, so no, it didn't do the release notes. Okay. I'm not.
Because I've definitely spent some time doing the replace behavior for that before, but
yes. So
generally,
effectively, I don't think we've got time to go over it now, but effectively what you would do is do a new line here, point at the new spec file, and then do the find and replace again. There are some helper functions for various things and then like specific things in the new spec.
Yeah.
I don't remember the entirety of what they are. In fact, no. So there's not one for the release notes, assuming. At least not one I can find offhand, nice and quick. So that's an enhancement that we would add to this, is sorting out the release notes there. And then there's one more function to call out, which, in fact, which is where you might even. Ooh, let me refresh myself on this. After update. That's the example that they've got there. So there is another function called after update. And in this case, there's a function there for setting the description based on the README.
So Corey's pointed out that. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
With.
Corey's pointed out that he's essentially hacked the new update of the release notes by including $version$ in the release notes URL. This, of course, will only work if you have a set release notes URL, and it always is going to match the version of the package that you're going to build, which obviously breaks horribly with a patch fix notation, but otherwise works solidly. Sorry to interrupt.
So from here, I don't think we've actually got time to actually do it, but I will quickly show how I schedule my automatic updates to go through GitHub Actions. So feel free to drop into this repository and borrow liberally if it matches what you want to do. But effectively, this might need to be a bit bigger. So effectively, within my GitHub Actions workflows, I list out all the packages that I have automatically set up. So I would add elk-native to this list. And then for each package, it goes and installs the chocolatey-au module. And then simply, like, if you strip it all back, it effectively just runs the update.ps1 script. There's a lot of other stuff in here for providing feedback to GitHub Actions about the status of things and whether or not the additional steps need to actually happen. I test the package. If that succeeds, then I publish it to the Chocolatey community repository. Of course, never committing secrets to code, so that's and there is a secret. And then also I commit the updated files back into the repository. So that's where you'll see in here, GitHub Actions ran yesterday, 13 hours ago. So these 4 out of the 5 packages had an update yesterday. And of course, GitHub is a nice GUI for this sort of stuff, so you can go on there and have a look at what ran, how it worked. Of course, the longest part there is testing things, but so that's one option for doing for actually scheduling your automatic updates. Some people use AppVia, but basically, as long as you can run a PowerShell script, you can automate your running your update scripts. Or, of course, just run it. Forget where I was going with that. But yeah, so
sorry.
yeah, as long as you can run a PowerShell script, you can run your AU updates. And of course, you don't have to use chocolatey-au either. If you really feel like it, you could write a completely custom script to go and get the information and do the updates. It's just chocolatey-au has done a lot of the work of doing a lot of the tedious bits for you.
Yeah. I'll admit that my personal package repository does not use AU, but I use a lot for the community packages and helping out there. So,
am I right in? No, I'm not going to go down that. That's a rabbit hole that could take us well off track. So then from here, in fact, let me just pull up the community repository for it. You can tell this is a fresh VM because
you haven't.
I haven't been to the community repository before.
Oh, that too. Yes, gosh.
Yeah, very haven't. Don't need to search for it because we know. So at this point, we've got our package elk-native. It's got the one version up there, which is 0.4.0, and there hasn't been an update since this was pushed in early March. From here, the next time there was an update, I've got it wired into my GitHub Actions. It will end up here. It will go through the automatic package services to check the quality and that. And then it will be put in a queue for a human to review. Now, and then they'll review it, hopefully approve it because they approved the previous version, and it's a very small change from version to version. But hopefully they approve it, and then it's available for everyone. From there, the next step is potentially it becoming a trusted package, which then just speeds up how quickly the package becomes available. Every maintainer has their own personal threshold. Sorry, not maintainer. Moderator has a threshold where they feel comfortable saying this is a trusted package. So, like for me, I want to see several hundred, if not over 1,000 downloads of a package, plus X amount of versions. Because effectively, as a moderator, what I'm saying when I say this is a trusted package is, I'm putting my
I'm on the line here.
My seal of approval on this package and trust in the maintainer.
Heck, I'll often go and look at maintainers' other packages before I'm willing to go down that route. It's that kind of level.
So I personally have quite a high bar, unless they're a known good maintainer, in which case it's still a very high bar, but it's slightly lower, admittedly. But that's the next step. And then eventually, eventually you'll have these packages that you're pushing automatically. They're very small changes. They're a known entity. As long as they keep working and keep them, as long as they keep working, then they should make it through moderation simply, and eventually get that trusted status and be available for people. So I think that other than not being able to actually go through the full GitHub Actions process, I think that's everything that I wanted to go over today.
Perfect.
Wonder if there's any last minute questions from anyone.
Yeah.
In fact, just to do the full on demonstration, as Corey mentioned earlier, let's remove that, and remove that. Then run the update. There we go. So it did put in all three of those things again, which is good. And if we'd...
yeah, if we'd removed the
version number, it would have put that in as well.
Yeah.
Although it would have been, if we'd changed that from 4.0, it would not have put the date fix in. Potentially. I think at some point it does check the remote repository, so I'm not... Anyway, that's a tangent.
Yes, tangents we can go into on another stream, perhaps. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's well covered.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you to Josh for taking us through all that coding today, for showing us how to keep all of our packages updated automatically when new versions are released. We've got a survey that we would love people to complete if they had a few moments. It really is about 10 seconds of work, I believe. And we just really want to make sure that we're doing stuff that people want to see. So you can find a link in the description or here on screen, very small up on the top left. And that's actually ch0.co/stream survey. To be notified of all the great chocolatey content that we have coming out every month, week, day, please come and join our community chat on Discord. Again, QR code popping up on screen there, but that's ch0.co/community. You'll get invited to our Discord server. You can subscribe to us here on YouTube or wherever you're watching us currently. Follow us in various places. Again, links will be down in the description or on the bottom of our homepage, chocolatey.org. Anything else we're missing? Yes, we're having another live stream, as we said earlier, in 2 weeks' time on the 18th of July at 4 p.m. UTC. If you want to join us there for some news, chat, and general opinions, shenanigans, etc., on software and software-related stuff, that'll be there, and it'll be available afterwards, both as a recording and a podcast. Thank you all for your time. Josh.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Josh.